Hey, how's it going? If you don't already know me, my name is Sam Barker. I'm a sound designer, re-recording mixer, and recording artist based out of Atlanta, Georgia. For the past couple months, I've been doing these re-sound designs of anime on Instagram and TikTok, mixed in Dolby Atmos, binaural, and I'd love to break this one down for you today. This came from Hunter x Hunter when Gon kind of goes berserk after P2 reveals she has killed Kite. It's one of the coolest all-time animations. So real quick, this is mixed in Dolby Atmos. Right now we're monitoring in so-called binaural audio. Basically, it allows the listener to experience surround in a stereo space when using headphones. Kind of breaks down on monitors or speakers, but on headphones, it uses some psychoacoustics and cool IR stuff of the human ear to give you an impression of surround. And the little green spheres you'll see all over the place are called objects, and it's a way to send sound through those objects, and where those little green spheres are is where you're going to hear the sounds from. You can send a track or tracks through an object, and wherever it appears here is where you're probably going to hear it. Another way to think about it is a theater, and that's where they're going to appear in the theater. But for listening on headphones, it makes more sense to visualize it this way. So let's go ahead and play it through one time, and then we'll talk about it, break it down a bit.
これで終わってもいい。
So there you go. Maybe a little overboard, but I liked the final product. So let me walk you through kind of my thought process here and kind of the steps I took to get here. Real quick about Dolby Atmos. Like I said, all of the green spheres are going to be your objects. There's really two options to mix in Dolby Atmos. You have your objects, which can be either mono or stereo objects. I've chosen to do mostly stereo here, and that's sending directly to the renderer and to objects. And then there's also beds. For instance, you could have a 5-1 bed or a 7-1-2 bed, and you can send directly to that bed, and you get a similar mixing window to this, and you can move things around, and they work pretty much the same and sound pretty much the same until you're trying to upmix above 7-1-2, or at least that's my understanding thus far. Pro Tools beds only go up to 7-1-2, and if you want 7-1-4, that's 7 surround, 4 overhead, and 1 low frequency emitter or LFE. If you want to do 7-1-4 or even 9-1-6, you're going to get better spatial placement out of an object because you can just do a re-render, which isn't based on a fixed set of speakers. 7-1-2 bed can always render downwards to like 5-1 without really any difference between objects and beds, but to get it higher than 7-1-2 objects is probably going to be your best bet. For big film projects, they're going to have 20 beds, maybe 10 for a whole bunch of different types of sound effects, a couple for dialogue, a couple for music, that sort of thing. But for my purposes, these are such small projects that I mostly just use objects or an object bed, where I'm placing a bunch of different objects into a folder like so, and then placing them wherever a speaker would be around the room, like so. And that lets me send to things statically just by busing rather than sending to an object that I'm automating moving around. That's enough about Atmos. Let's get in to the design itself. For this one, I started off with basically energy beds, I like to call them. Basically taking, like for this, I think I took TV static and then sent it through a granulizer like Portal, perhaps. Pretty sure I sent it through Portal, which output is not working at the moment for some reason. But Portal or Crystallizer, and then I think I did, and I'm doing all this via Audio Suite, which is clip by clip, and once you do it, it's written, so that's why I can't show you on my inserts here. But then I think I did some distortion and maybe a little bit of EQ, but if you take a listen, so this started as TV static, and then I'm just accentuating different parts by ear and setting them through an H delay with a little bit of feedback, 37, ping-ponging left and right, and about half a second of delay. So that's part of the energy bed. And then I'm sending and then this one started as a texture, but I think I broke it down even more. And again, granulized. For those who are wondering, a granulizer, like, just search for crystallizer. Basically what a granulizer does is it's taking little splices of sound called grains. For this, I'm changing it to 100 milliseconds or thereabouts. And then it's splitting up a sound into a whole bunch of different parts, even parts like that. And then depending on your granulizer setting or which one you're using, like this is the crystallizer, which is a granular echo synthesizer. So it's adding a level of delay into it. But it's taking those little splices from different parts in your waveform and it's sending it back through some delay. And recycle is basically how much do you want your grains to be recycled into the delay. Crystallizer also lets you change the pitch, but at its core, a granulizer is taking one sound and splitting it up into a whole bunch of little tiny parts and then taking those tiny parts called grains and doing what you want with them, pretty much. So yeah, after putting it through a granulizer, we have that. And then I'm sending both of these into a bus, and then that bus is being automated to move around the surround field, like so. So that was kind of my starting point. That's the base of the soundscape. The next kind of big thing I focused on was wind. And then I found this awesome little clip from paragliding. Someone recorded, like field recorded from a paraglider. So yeah, it's just a great little ambience. And then again, more wind. And, in this huge echoey room, I really wanted that wind to be big because I felt like it would reverberate off these like concrete walls a whole bunch. And then you'll notice I'm sending to a bunch of different places. So I'm sending to my object bed, my left stereo rear and right stereo rear, which are down here, up there. Then I'm sending to another bus, which is an object, and then I'm moving the wind around the surround field a whole bunch. And what that's doing a little bit is actually getting some phase problems, but it's so short that it adds movement rather than like canceling. If I had some phase problems and they were just static, that would be an issue because, it would just be quieter and sound kind of shitty, not full. But if I'm getting quick phase problems, the feeling there is like it might feel like real movement. That's wind. Going into this, I knew I wanted like some sort of nasty drone. I wanted something that was gonna sound huge and make your skin crawl almost. And I struggled at first to find that huge drone sound. I love taking, different animal sounds, layering them onto things that might not have, an animal sound usually, and you can usually, through doing that, find some textures that you might not have before. There's something in our monkey brains that makes us fear animals a little bit and makes us really attuned to other animal noises. So layering those on top of other sounds you have can be a good way to add depth and emotion to them. Someone I really respect, sound designer Andrew Lackey, who runs Wabi Sound, which is a game sound studio. They did stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest, I'm pretty sure. But he posted something on socials recently talking about how, like, if you're gonna use an animal sound, the scale of it has to match what you're going for. So if it's a dragon, you can't use a Bengal tiger roar because it's not big enough. Now maybe, you know, if the field recording was like from inside the mouth of the Bengal tiger, you might have something different. But he says scale matters and distance from the subject matters. So thinking about that, I was like, what's the biggest sound I can think of? And my head went to whale song. Water has a cool sonic effect where sound travels way faster in water than it does over air. So it can often feel like the sound is really around you. So I looked for aquaphone recordings of whale songs and found some. For any plugins, this is what it sounds like. So really deep, you know, like throaty whale tones. And it's got the scale, but it didn't have the bite I needed. So I sent it through a plugin I use on every sound design, the Capitator. It's just amazing for adding high frequency information and crushing things and getting a little bit of soft clipping. And then another one of my favorite plugins, Magma Tube Channel Strip, has this compression and smash feature that can really mangle sounds too and take out a lot of dynamics in a really pleasing and musical way. And then I've got a Vintage Verb with, I think this is just the default settings of Vintage Verb, but it needed more depth and tail on these sounds. Here's without again. And here's with. Just that like mid-range throat guttural feeling. Here's another one. And then with plugins. So I'm getting some compression from the Magma channel strip. I think my favorite ones are near the end. Kind of innocuous, but you throw the plugins back in. It's almost like bees swarming, which I felt really matched the visuals here. And then of course I'm setting to the LFE, to my left top rears to make it a little more dimensional, you could say, if you want to take a peek. Yeah, just so again it feels like it's coming from all around you. So I was really happy with how those drones came out. The next kind of big portion of this sound design project was these like crunchy, I think I call them dark mids, lows, and mains. Basically, they're magic sound effects from Soundly that have these like fleshy but dark textures to them. So here you go. My biggest problem with these, I love how they turned out, but they take up a ton of space in the mix. They're low, mid, and high frequency, just taking up room. And it really muddied up stuff, especially with these big drones that I spent all this time making. And from the dark ambience that I designed to start it. So take a listen without Soothe. It's all right, but it's kind of hard to pick out individual sounds. And then this is with Soothe 2 side chained right in the mid-range. So I know it's an expensive solution, but the beauty of Soothe is, especially for sound effects, which rarely have like a consistent tonal sound. Like a guitar is going to have a consistent resonance in some cases if you're playing on the same part of the neck that you can then EQ out of other things or accentuate in that guitar. But sound effects like these, they're constantly moving tonally. But because Soothe is like a resonance algorithm at the end of the day, if you sidechain into it and put it on what you're trying to carve the other sound out of, it's just going to carve right out of those resonances. And in some parts here, I'm taking close to 12 dB off, but I don't really care because, you know, it's just a bed of energy. So it honestly helps it to be a little more dynamic and not feel so, you know, static and lifeless. And I'm doing a little bit of volume automation here too to kind of duck this out of the way. But Soothe's doing some heavy lifting. That allowed me, I still think it's, you know, these are a little too much for the soundscape, but Soothe made it like passable. So it's a good tip for you. Kind of the last couple things, you know, near the end, I've got an earthquake ambience going. I don't even think I volume automated it. It's just to add that low frequency, and that's hitting my LFE pretty hard. And then left stereo rear, right stereo rear. Again, trying to make it feel like it's all around me, all around the listener in a concrete room. And then I've just got a couple more little designed sound effects that I've found in libraries. Thunder there. This is the best one I've found. Tonally, it just fit everything else, so I could use it. I've got this little transition sound here. And that's pretty much all the sound effects. And then everything else was just mixing it in Dolby, so it really had impact and felt like you were in the room. That was my goal with this, and I think I got pretty close. But for stuff like this effect, you know, it's simple, but I'm moving from the top of the surround field to the bottom, from rear to front. And all of a sudden, it becomes super dynamic. We can open up some of the objects here, and you know, this is what automation looks like for these. And I'm basically just keyframe automating. You have two different methods you can automate. You can perform it, which if you have joysticks on a console, probably preferable. It takes way less time. For me, I'd have to go into each knob and perform it, or at least each category. So it ends up being faster to just keyframe automate by hand. So they're just moving around in the surround field. And then you'll see stuff like this, which this is a trick that I've learned just in the past month or so. But I found if you take, Pro Tools has all of these different pen tools, but the random, I found if you take on the height of something that moves up and down frequently, and you just randomize the height a whole bunch, it'll sound like it's modulated even. Here. So it's just a quick and easy way to add movement, pretty much. And I do that on a lot of stuff. That's pretty much the entire project. This one's not too big, but I felt like I used some good sounds to impress the like depth and size of, you know, the awesome visuals. So I hope I did it justice. My favorite part's still definitely gonna be the whale song into just like bees and sandpaper. It's the only way I can describe it. Yeah, nah. nasty. But thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, shoot me an email. Pretty sure my email is in the info page on my YouTube. And if you have any freelance inquiries or anything like that, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much. Let me know.